welcome to Able to Raise, a program brought to you by the Disability Rights Center of the Virgin Islands and WTJX Channel 12. I'm your host, Amelia Headley Lamont. My guest is a disability rights and inclusion advocate. She's a mom to a beautiful daughter with cerebral palsy, and she's also a freelance writer for various online outlets. Welcome, Adiba Nelson.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
It's morning where you are. It's afternoon where we are.
Fact.
But it's so good to see you. It is so good to see you. Welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
We met at a conference having to do with African Americans with disabilities, and you were a speaker at the closing plenary. And at that time, or shortly thereafter, you had disclosed that you hail from the Caribbean, and I was quite intrigued. What a small world! So tell us a little bit about yourself, please.
So thank you for that introduction. My name is Adiba Nelson. I am a children's book author. I am a writer for various online outlets, Washington Post, Huffington Post. I've written for Everyday Feminism, My Brown Baby, but yes, at the heart of it all, I am a Caribbean girl. My father's family hailed from Barbados, and my mother's family hails from a tiny little island right next door to where you are, Vieques, Puerto Rico. Still have a lot of family that lives on the main island in San Juan and Ponce and Carolina, and I believe we also have family in Luquillo. But my mom was raised right there in Vieques, playing down at El Fortín, and I have an aunt, an uncle, and I think 3 cousins that actually live right there in the Virgin Islands.
Well, I have to laugh. I had a private concern because when you disclosed that you had relatives from the Virgin Islands, I said, well, geez, I hardly know you. Am I asking too much? And then there was a pause in the communication, and then you just let loose like you just did. Family here, there. So I didn't, overstep my bounds.
No,
I
not
appreciate
at all.
that. Now,
No.
you said that you were raised primarily by your mom.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us what that was like and how that's impacted your ability to raise your daughter.
Well, my mom she's a Latin mom. It's the best way to put it. She has a mean chancleta game. For viewers who may not know, although I'm sure if you're there on the island, you know that chancla, it goes through and it boomerangs right back. My mom was a single mom. She was very strong. She knew that she had to raise me to be independent because, at any given point in time, the universe can say time's up. And so she raised me to be able to do for myself at a very young age, which, as a kid can be difficult. Because you want to do all the things that your friends are doing, and sometimes you just can't because mom says no. And when mom says no, it's no and don't ask again. But the great thing is that she was also a special education teacher when I was growing up, and she taught in the school that I went to school at. And so when I would get done with my class, she would always have me come up to her classroom and help her with her students. And so being around people that were different from me, that's been my life for as long as I can remember. Some of her closest friends when I was growing up were deaf or blind because they worked with her in the school, in her classrooms. And so growing up and seeing blind people using Braille or using a cane to walk, that was everyday. It was everyday conversation for me. Seeing kids who maybe had difficulties with learning or with speaking or with behavioral issues or emotional issues, that was just part of everyday life. There are pictures of me floating somewhere in my mother's house with me at 6 years old, volunteering at the Special Olympics. So it's always been part of my life, and I've always been raised with this idea that if you have, give, if you can, do, and no one person is better than the other. We're all here to help each other, and we're all here to uplift each other. And anything is really possible. there's really nothing that one can't do, either independently or with the aid of someone else. And that, I feel like, has definitely transferred into my parenting of my child. I've kind of, maybe much to my own chagrin, raised a very independent child. But I know that it's what's going to serve her when the universe says, okay, my time is up.
Right, right. And, I would imagine while you are giving these gifts to her, that will redound to you at some point, right? You'll be so pleased with what you've raised.
I already am. I see how, in her own way, she's already advocating for herself. And a lot of times that results in her telling me no, when the answer very clearly should not be no.
Now, for Claire, how old is Emery now?
She's 11, so she's in that preteen stage.
Okay.
And so I try not to really get too upset about it because, one, I know it's that age. This is the exact age where I tried my mom at every corner. So I know that she's doing what is age appropriate for her. But at the same time, I also love that she's not afraid to tell me no, that she's not afraid to stand up for herself. If I am trying to feed her and she's not interested in my help, she will bat my hand away. And at that point, it's, one, we don't hit mom. You can use your words. Two, thank you for letting me know. I always want her to know that she has that space and the ability and the right to say no, to say very clearly what she wants and doesn't want. She may not always get it. It doesn't always swing in your pendulum, honey, or the pendulum doesn't always swing in your direction, honey.
Right.
But the fact that she knows that this is a safe space to practice advocating for herself, I feel really good about that. I feel proud that she knows that she can do that. And so now we've begun to take it a step further, where I've begun to let her schedule her therapy appointments. So we'll be on the phone with the therapist, getting ready to book out the next month of appointments. And the therapist will say, okay, Emery, I have these days open. And I'll say, okay, you have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Which day do you want? She'll pick the day. The therapist will say, okay, these are the times. I'll show her would be 2 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 1 o'clock, and 9 a.m. Which one do you want? And she'll pick the one. So it's starting to kind of branch out into her being able to flex a little bit more of her own independence and have some autonomy for her own life.
That's excellent. What I'd like to do now is let's just take a brief takeaway and see what it's like. What's a day in the life of you and your daughter? That would be fabulous.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I wouldn't have been here to tell this story.
Right.
Yeah.
What would that be?
Share your light with us.
And,
So, when you're in the hospital,
Good morning.
do you remember any?
What?
Yeah.
Let's get up. Well, you have to eat breakfast. That's the drill. I knew when Emery was 2 months old that something wasn't right. Hold on. So I kind of had this inkling that she had possibly cerebral palsy. Roll yourself out into the kitchen. And it was kind of one of those things. Crashing into my walls, please. But I didn't sign up for this part of it. Like, what? Okay. Open up. Thank you. But then there was also this rebellious part of me that was like, well, F that, nothing's going to slow us down. So let's just get on that train and keep going. Miss Emery, it's time to pick out your clothes. Go to your room, please. Turn on your light. Yes, no?
No.
This one?
Yeah.
All right. The ways that I've grown just being her mom and going on this journey with her. Okay. Over the head, and then put your arms through. I think that was kind of that test of arms. Are you gonna do what you need to do for this child?
Thank you.
And we've been through a lot together.
Ready to sit up?
You're in. That's on. Let's go. It just got to the point where I knew that I couldn't be the only person who had lived through certain things or had thoughts about certain things.
just being her mom and watching how she moves through life without judgment, without fear, without expecting the worst. She's just open. I needed to learn that. I still need to learn that.
That's really nice.
Thank you.
She looks like she's a real go-getter. It looked like she was driving behind you, actually.
You know, she is a backseat driver. I'm not gonna lie. She really is. She is a go-getter. She's so full of sass and spunk and personality. I really feel blessed and lucky to be chosen to be her mom. So just every day we laugh hysterically.
Now, previous conversations, you mentioned that she's a very busy person too. She does have quite a social life, correct?
Yes.
And there was an episode that I would like for you to relate to our audience when she didn't quite get what we wanted.
Yeah. So my daughter uses an AugCom device, a communication device, to speak to me, basically. We also have, our gesture communication and verbal communication and sign language, but every now and again, she'll use the communication device. And she has a great group of friends that she's been with since kindergarten. And they go to the movies, they have slumber parties, all the things that kids do when they get to like 4th, 5th grade. And one weekend she wanted to have a slumber party with her girlfriends. And I was like, no, we're not gonna do that this weekend, maybe next weekend. There's too much happening now. And she kept insisting, I want to do the slumber party. I want to do the slumber party. And I told her, look, don't ask me again. The answer is no. It's going to say no. No, we're not doing it. If you ask me again, you're not going to do it next weekend either. Kind of, did that thing where kids do. We're sitting there and we're watching TV and I'm like, you can huff and puff all you want. It's not going to change my mind. And so I see her kind of playing with her talker. Don't really think anything about it. And then I hear her press the button where it talks and she kind of nudges me and it says bench. And I'm like, bench? And she's like, yeah. And I was like, bench what? What are you talking about? Bench, like what is a bench? And she points to me. And I was like, me bench? I'm bench. I see what you did here. So my child, in her frustration with not being able to have her slumber party, decided this was the opportune time to let me know exactly how she felt. And found a word that sounded very much like a different word that she wanted to say, but that word was not in her communication device. So she found one that sounded like it and then made sure that I heard it. And the mom in me, your first reaction is, oh, what? Girl, no. You do not.
Right.
You lose all your teeth. What are you doing? But then, the disability advocate in me was like, but wait a minute. Like, this is really advanced because you thought of what you wanted to say. You knew that word wasn't there. So you found a word that looked and sounded like it, put that one in, and then let me know, hey, this is what I think of you right now. It's a mixture of, do I punish you or do I praise you?
Yeah, right.
Can I do both? Is that good parenting at this point? And so that's what I ended up doing. I said, okay, first of all, don't you ever in life think that you can use this word with me.
Yeah.
Not okay.
Right.
Secondly, though, girl, high five. That is huge.
Right. That's
You're expressing yourself and letting me know, but don't ever.
Which I think for purposes of information, you had indicated we established that Emery has cerebral palsy, but you've also informed us that it does not limit her cognitive abilities, her ability to understand, to learn, to do what you just described, because that's a learning curve, right? I mean, can you give us a little more information about that for the general consumption? What does it mean?
So her macro diagnosis is cerebral palsy, which means like kind of the overarching umbrella that is the easiest one for everyone to recognize is cerebral palsy. That is part of her diagnosis. The micro diagnosis in there is bilateral schizencephaly, which means she has two holes in her brain, one on either side, bilateral, and they affect her fine motor, gross motor, and speech. But cognitively, she is on par with her grade level. And social emotional, I almost venture to say she's more social and more emotional than your average person. She is a true empath at heart. So she understands everything I say to her. She likes to act like she doesn't understand, but she knows. She understands everything that you communicate to her. Sometimes, some concepts are very abstract and very nuanced. So you have to kind of tailor it to kid level, right?
Right.
But she understands concepts and thought processes and can do the work that her friends in school are doing. She has that sassy, funny personality that your average 11, 12-year-old has. She's moody. She gets cranky. She is a whole human being full of life and personality. And I'll never forget when she was in preschool, I kind of went back and forth with the preschool that she was at when we first moved to Arizona. And I eventually ended up pulling her out of that preschool because when we moved here, she was 1.5 years. She was 6 months from turning 2, and they insisted on keeping her in the infant room, not even the 1-year-old room, because she couldn't walk yet. And I kept challenging them. Let's put her in at least the 1-year-old room. Walking has nothing to do with learning your numbers, your colors, your alphabet.
Right.
It's nothing to do with it. And the director kept pushing back and saying, this is a requirement, it's a state requirement. What this director didn't know is that I used to work for an agency that worked with the State Department of Licensure.
Oh my
So
goodness.
I knew this was not a requirement. I knew that you could be fined quite heavily and sanctioned by the state for discriminating against kids with disabilities. And so because I am who I am, I made a phone call or two. And a week later, the state was at the childcare.
Good.
Because I'm not going to allow you to limit my child based on your own preconceptions and your own biases. And I think a lot of times people fall into that without even realizing that they are employing their own biases on people that have nothing to do with them.
That is why this conversation is so important, I think, to our community. What has been your experience with the health care industry and Emory from the time he was born until now?
Ooh, child. So Emory was born in Houston, Texas. And when she was born, there was no indication from my doctors or the perinatal specialist that I had to see while I was pregnant, because I was a high-risk pregnancy, that there were going to be any cognitive or physical differences in my child. They thought she was going to be born at around 7 or 8 pounds. She was 5 pounds, 13 ounces. She was born with a brachial plexus injury, i.e. Erb's palsy, where her left arm from within her collarbone through her shoulder joint and down to her arm is underdeveloped and does not function as well as her right arm.
Okay.
The doctors, according to them, had no knowledge of that. Even though I was having sonograms, I felt like almost every week. And did the whole 3D weird wax baby ultrasound, all of that.
Right.
They never saw these things. Then after she was born, I dealt with some postpartum, but my background is in child development and child and family social work. So I knew milestones like the back of my hand.
Okay.
And at 2 months, I saw that she wasn't hitting certain milestones. She wasn't holding her head up. She wasn't cooing and babbling. I also saw that her hip joints were very rigid. She couldn't fully, most babies, they're so flexible, their legs just flop.
Right.
she was kind of always in like this kind of lotus position when I would lay her on her back. And so I brought it up to the pediatrician, and she said, "Oh, don't worry about it. Babies all develop at their own rate, and babies' bones are malleable. She'll be fine."
Mm.
I said, "Okay." 4-month checkup comes along. Okay. She's still not cooing and babbling. She still can't hold her head up. She cannot sit up independently. And her legs are still very rigid. And when I hold her up in a sitting position, she has this weird posture, kind of like this. And so I bring this up to the pediatrician. "Oh, don't worry about it. Babies all develop at their own rate. Baby's bones are malleable. She'll be fine." 6-month visit, again with the same thing, saying, "Look, I know you keep telling me that babies all develop at their own rate, but my child simply is not developing. And I'm not seeing, she's not hitting these milestones that babies should be hitting. She should be able to be on at least hands and knees at this point, or doing a commando crawl and rocking back and forth.
Right.
Tummy time. It's not happening." Again, she hits me with the babies develop at their own rate. I wouldn't worry about it. So now I'm getting frustrated, but I also don't really know where to turn because I'm not a Houston native. I don't know what my resources are. If we were back in Arizona, I would know exactly who to call, what to do.
Right.
I didn't know any of that in Texas. And my daughter's arm still was not working. Her left arm just was not working. So finally, at the 9-month checkup, she finally agrees to send us to an orthopedic specialist at Shriners Hospital in Texas, only to have her arm looked at. Nothing else that I've been mentioning.
Wow.
And because I'm a mom, moms, our kid gets a cut, we immediately go to WebMD, realize that our kid's leg is going to fall off, and we do what we need to do.
That's right. That's right.
So I had been researching everything. And because I had a background in child development, because I had a mom who was a special education teacher, I had also at one point been a camp counselor at a camp for kids with disabilities. I had this knowledge, kind of a base level knowledge of various disabilities. So I went to friendly Google and I put in all these symptoms that I was seeing in my child, these discrepancies, and it pulled up this thing called bilateral schizencephaly. And I kind of learned about it and I was like, this looks exactly like what's going on with my child. So when we got to Shriners Hospital for this appointment for her arm, the orthopedist comes in and it's like, "Oh, okay, I see we're here to look at Emery's arm. I see she has a brachial plexus injury." And I was like, "Yeah, that's the blanket reason why we're here, but I don't think that injury has anything to do with her bones. I think it's really in her brain." And she kind of stopped me. She says, "Well, what do you mean?" So I tell her all the things that I've been seeing. I was like, all of this lines up with the neurological discrepancy. There's something happening in her brain that messages are not getting through. Neurons are not firing, synapses are not connecting. Something is not happening here. I found this thing online called bilateral schizencephaly. I feel like this could be it. But I just had to get in here. So sure, we came on the arm, but I don't want you to look at her arm. I want you to look at her brain.
Sure. Good for you.
And she listened to me and she said, "This is out of my wheelhouse, but I feel like you could be onto something. Let me bring in our pediatric neurologist." She brought in the pediatric neurologist. He did a couple of tracking tests with her, decided he wanted to do an MRI, did the MRI. We came back, I think like a week or two later, and he confirmed that what I had actually looked up and diagnosed was exactly what she had.
An excellent example of being an advocate. Excellent.
Especially as a Black woman.
Right.
It's no secret that we're not taken seriously in the healthcare. It's no secret that we are thought to have higher levels of pain threshold, that we make things up, that there's a belief that we make things up in our mind. My mother had a stroke and the doctor actually asked me if she was a drug user.
Oh, geez.
Okay. No, she had a stroke.
Right.
And tried to convince my mom that she was making it up. So,
okay.
As Black women, as Black mothers, as Black parents, it is our responsibility to almost be like a bulldog about it. Like, do not let it go.
Don't let it go. Absolutely. Now, you mentioned that Emery is taking therapy. What kinds of therapy is she receiving now?
So right now she does speech therapy, physical therapy, and occupational therapy.
And all of this is provided by, I would imagine, the Department of Education?
So here in Arizona, you know, we don't get a lot of things right, but disability care, we've kind of figured that one out.
Okay.
So we have a clinic called Children's Clinics, which is, it's heaven. It is a one-stop shop for basically every single disability or medical specialty you can think of that affects children. So she gets therapy there, and then also at school, she gets physical therapy, speech therapy, and occupational therapy. So she's getting both ends.
Excellent. Excellent. How has been your experience? You know, we're under this COVID-19 situation, and I'd be curious as to how that whole, and we don't have a sense that it's going to be ending at least anytime soon.
Right.
How has it been for you doing homeschooling, or what has been for options at the present time?
Oh boy. Okay. So it has not been the easiest. If I'm going to be completely honest, it has not been the easiest, not because we have not had support from our school district. Our school district has been fantastic in making sure that Emery had assistance from her one-on-one, who would get on the computer with her every day for about an hour and do schoolwork with her, to making sure that Emery had all of her adaptive technology here at the house so that she could complete the work, and all the assistive technology. So the school has been fantastic. It's more so been just the stress of trying to parent, but also trying to work, and also trying to keep us both healthy and alive.
Right.
So we have, up until recently, been in the house staring at each other for the last 3 months. Our going out consists of getting in the van and going to the post office and then coming back home.
Yeah, well, that's understandable. That's understandable.
It's been a bit of a challenge. You know, in the very beginning stages of the pandemic, I really didn't let her go into anyone's home. Like, we just stayed in our bubble. But then I realized that for me, myself, I felt like my mental health was starting to struggle a little bit. It's one thing to take care of your child with a disability. It's another thing to do it as a single parent. It's a complete other beast when you're doing it as a single parent in the middle of a pandemic.
Yeah, wow.
And so I really felt like I was starting to slip into a place where I just wasn't taking care of myself. And if I'm not taking care of myself, then I certainly can't take care of my child. And for me, taking care of myself means, you know, meditating in the mornings, doing a gratitude journal, making sure that I'm getting my own work done, you know, my work that keeps the roof over our heads, getting groceries done, cooking for us. That's what keeps me going. That routine that I always thought was just my regular routine is actually a huge part of my mental health and my self-care. So the state offers us respite care here.
Really?
Yeah, they offer us 600 hours a year.
Wow.
Yeah, and our respite provider, our respite provider is one of Emery's aides from school. And so I got with her and I said, hey, I'm struggling. I need some time where it's just me, because it was becoming me trying to get all of the things done as a parent and as a writer. And then she ends up spending a lot of time in front of the TV, not getting any attention from me. And then there's that mom guilt that layers in on top of all of the other things. And that was really starting to kind of eat away at me. And so I called our respite provider and said, hey, I need some time. I'm struggling. She's not getting any attention from me because I'm trying to do all the other things. I'm not being able to give attention to myself. So we worked it out where she goes to respite 3 days a week from 10 to 4. And I handle all the things that I need to get done, whether it's work related, health related, cooking for the week, brain dumps, whatever. And then Tuesdays and Thursdays and the weekend, she has my full attention.
Excellent. What
And
advice would you give other parents, moms, or single parents?
self-care is not just a meme that you see on Instagram.
Right.
It is a living, breathing thing that we have to employ, not only for ourselves, but for the sake of our families. If we do not employ self-care, whatever that looks like, even if it's just, putting the kids to bed early and sitting in the bathtub for an hour, our physical health will start to decline as much as, if not quicker than, our mental health. 2 years ago, I was not taking care of myself at all. And I was burning candle on both ends. And I got so sick that I basically had to lay in bed for about a month.
Wow.
My autoimmune system just went into overdrive. And my doctor literally said, I am prescribing you self-care. Every 3 months, you must do something for yourself. Your body cannot keep doing this.
Excellent point. And I'd like to show our listening or viewing audience another dynamo parent who lives in St. Thomas by the name of Chevelle Simeon. She's a parent as well. And let's hear a little bit about what she has to say.
Okay.
What does able to raise mean to me as a parent of 2 boys with autism? That's a difficult one. My name is Chevelle Simeon. I'm the founder of Virgin Islands Parents of Autistic Children. And my passion for individuals with disabilities comes from the fact that I am a mother of 2 boys with disabilities. My older son, who's 7, he's may be considered to be high functioning. And because of that, he's able to talk. He can, verbalize certain things. He does relatively well in school. And so it's like, oh, you sure he's autistic? No, he's not autistic. He gonna outgrow it. Those kind of responses in our community. My younger son, he's nonverbal, so he does not talk. He has a lot of sensory issues. So some may consider him to be low functioning. However, there are things that he does very well. He's very well at problem solving, doing puzzles and things like that. So it has nothing to do with his intellectual ability. He just doesn't talk. I think I brought it to my son's pediatrician before she told me, my first son. I was like, something's not right here. He's not meeting this particular milestone that he should be meeting at this point. And she's like, you know what, you're right. Let's go ahead and have him tested. You know your child. Pretty much that's it. No one is going to know your child better than you. And if it doesn't feel right, it doesn't hurt to get tested. It doesn't hurt to say, well, so Johnny isn't doing what I think he should be doing right now. What is something I can do? You get the child tested, and if the test comes back that there is some type of developmental delay, then you start early intervention. That's the most important part. I feel like what has helped me as a parent were those early interventions, was the infants and toddlers program that both my sons went through. They were able to get developmental therapy, speech therapy, things that helped them to manage better in the classroom and helped me as well at home. So I would definitely say for a parent, if it doesn't feel right, it doesn't hurt to get tested. Forget the stigma, forget the label, have the test done so you can get the support that your child needs. When my 2 sons were diagnosed, there weren't any organizations for me to turn to. There weren't any parent support groups or advocacy groups or anything like that. And so I felt very alone, which was part of the reason why I founded Parents of Autistic Children. Initially, it was just to get the support that I felt I needed. And when Irma hit in 2017, the members in my group and myself realized we needed to do more. There was a lack of awareness, and so we made it a new part of our mission to spread awareness and acceptance and also advocacy within our community. So it started off just support, and it evolved into something more. 2 to 3 years from now, I want to see VIPAC, Virgin Islands Parents of Autistic Children, as a powerhouse in the areas of advocacy. I think here in the Virgin Islands, sometimes we're afraid to make a little bit of noise. We're afraid to say the things that we need. We think that our children might be penalized for it or, picked on. And so we kind of like go back into the shadows. I would love to see the parents of PAC become the leaders in advocacy for individuals with disabilities. And it could start with our own children and then branch out to any child or individual with disabilities. What does able to raise mean to me as a parent of 2 boys with autism? That's a difficult one, because sometimes you don't feel able. You feel like it's too much. But what makes it more possible or manageable is being able to surround yourself with individuals who will help you on that journey.
Well said.
Oof.
I know. Well said.
Ooh, I was not prepared for that.
And so, it's been nice, Deep, as you mentioned, that you have had some outlets, right? The state provides you with some respite support.
Mhm.
What about other entities? Who do you go to for support? Family, friends, organizations? What have you been able to rely on?
So my mom is a great support for me. Of course, there's only so much she can offer because she's never been a parent to a child with disabilities. And so there's a definite learning curve there for her. It's one thing to teach children with disabilities. It's another thing to raise a child with a disability. But she's been a great support. My ex-husband, who is the only dad that my daughter has known in her older years, has been a great support in helping me advocate for her and all the things that she needs. I have a great group of friends here who, what we call, they hold space for me when I'm feeling a little bit heavy.
Mm-hmm.
They're really great about asking me what I need before I even have a chance to ask for help. Because I think as a special need parent, we don't necessarily always like to ask for help,
Right.
And so I have a really great group of friends here. But then there's also a program that I was able to participate in a few years back called Partners in Policymaking.
Yes.
And it's an organization, I don't know if they have it there in the Virgin Islands, but it was started by Pilot Parents, which is an advocacy group for parents of kids with disabilities. And I believe it's a 6-week program that you go through. You go to this class. It's an all-day class once a month, and you learn how to be an advocate for your child or yourself. If you're the person with a disability, you learn how to be an advocate in the educational field, in the health and medical field, in the legal field. There's a day where you spend the day at the Capitol and you learn how to lobby. You learn how bills are passed, how bills are made, why certain bills are important, what things need to be in certain bills so that they can pass. You learn about the pork that's in bills that can help or hurt, whatever it is that you're trying to get done. That served, that gave me a lot of knowledge. I've always been kind of feisty. I've never really been one to take no for an answer. But now knowing how to not take no for an answer and have the law back me up changes the game.
It's an empowering thing. What
Very
made you decide to become a writer? What made you choose that path?
Oh, so according to my mom, I've been writing since I was 4. I don't know if that's true or not. But the way that I got into my children's book series is I was just being a mom, doing what moms do, taking my daughter to the bookstore on a Saturday afternoon, looking for books that we could buy that she could see herself in. You know, I think every kid should see themselves represented in the world around them, whether it's TV, whether
Right.
it's books, whatever, representation is very important.
Absolutely.
And so naive little me went to Barnes and Nobles and asked the clerk if they could help me find any books about little Black girls with disabilities.
And they said, huh?
What is that?
Something. Yeah.
They didn't necessarily say what is that, but they said that doesn't exist.
Wow.
What do you mean that doesn't exist? Because my kid is right here and she exists. You see
Right.
her.
Right.
They said they didn't have any books that centered a little Black girl with a disability. I said, okay, I will let you have that. That might be a little bit niche. What about books where the main character has a disability? So they took me to, I think his name is Mayor Mercer or Mercer Mayer, the Little Critters books. And there was one book about their special friend.
Oh, dear.
And I looked at it and I said, okay, first of all, my kid is not a critter. So this doesn't really work for me.
Right.
And secondly, the critter and the character with the disability, he's not even the main character. He's a sub-character. And the book talks about his disability, not necessarily about him. And other books that I found that were around disability talked about the disability and not the kid. And I kept thinking to myself, I'm not interested in this kid's disability.
Right.
Tell me about the kid.
Right.
Tell me about this child. Like, what is this child into?
Right.
Because my child is so much more than just her disability. Yes, her disability is absolutely part of her identity.
Right.
She is absolutely part of disability culture. But she also has a personality and things she likes to do. And I wanted to see that. And I wanted to see herself accurately represented on the pages of a book as a whole human being. And I couldn't find it. And so I went home and I rage wrote. And I don't know if anyone has ever rage written a children's book, but it's a thing.
Okay.
I did it and it didn't take me that long to write, but it just kind of poured out of me. So I said, if I can't find a book for my kid, then I'm going to write her a book and it'll just be her book that she sees herself in. And I showed it to my cousin and my cousin's like, you have to do something with this. You think she's the only kid with a disability who doesn't see herself? I was like, oh, that's a good point. And so I shopped it to a couple of publishers or agents and I got turned down numerous times. One agent actually told me, no, I can't represent this. The world's not ready for this yet. And I remember thinking to myself, my kid is here now. We don't have time to wait for the world to be ready to see her. Like, that's not a thing I'm going to do. I'm not going to sit around and wait for the world to take notice of the fact that my child is here, exists, and has the right to everything every other child has access to. So I taught myself how to self-publish my book, and it took 2 years. But in 2013, I launched the children's book series, the Meet Clarabelle Blue series. And to this date, I think I've independently sold 6,000 or a little over 6,000.
Excellent.
On my own, because publishers didn't want it.
Excellent.
Wow.
And I have a copy of your book, and I remember that you inscribed it by saying "Dream big."
Yes.
And I could see how that really speaks to your view of the world itself, and that we need to not limit ourselves, not to impose restrictions on ourselves, that we should dream big and not accept no for an answer.
Absolutely.
Now, again, I mentioned earlier that I initially met you at a conference on African Americans and disabilities, and that was in February of 2020. And another thing that you talked about was body image and how women of color in particular and women with disabilities have to grapple with our self-image. Can you elaborate a little bit about that? Because that was another thing that really resonated with me.
Right. So as Black women, we have been literally, this is not a figurative statement, literally under the microscope since some time. From the way our body is shaped, from the way our facial features are, our hair, our cellular makeup. I mean, there's not one aspect of life on this planet that we have not touched and that hasn't been under speculation. As a Black woman, as a Black mother, it is 100% my responsibility to be the person that my daughter looks to and finds her sense of self, her confidence, her knowing where her footing is in this world. Because as a Black woman alone, the world is going to try to tell you that you're ugly, you're not desirable, you're not smart enough, you're not qualified. Just being a Black woman,
right,
person. Then you layer that with disability, and it almost can feel, and I can't speak authentically to this because I am not a Black woman that has a disability in the way that my daughter has a disability. But I can speak to this in observing how people have treated her as a Black girl child. Asking me what's wrong with her. Nothing.
Right.
Addressing me instead of addressing her.
Right.
Assuming that she cannot communicate, assuming that she is not aware. All of these things are just compounded. And so this intersectionality of Black, female, disabled, it's something that I work really hard to make sure that she has pictures in our home, in her room, of Black, female, disabled people doing life.
Right.
Models, athletes, writers, on TV. There's a show called Raising Dion, and the little girl on there is not Black, she's Hispanic, and we are Afro-Latin. And Emery loves that show, not only because it's a great show, but the little girl on there, every time she sees her, she's like, oh, she's like me. She will point to that little girl, say, that's me. That's nice. And little girl and Emery have the same exact wheelchair. So of course, Emery's like, oh my gosh, no, that's really me. And then she sees the book, Clarabelle Blue. And she's like, oh, wow, I'm a celebrity, obviously. But it's important. It's important to have that visual representation so that our children, girls and boys, know that there are no limits, despite the limits that society and culture may want to place on you. And we do it with even within our own culture. I'm going to do a little bit of a call out of our own. We do it within our own culture. There are no limits. There is nothing that is in your way because of the intersectionality that you hold. And I think it's our responsibility as parents to make sure that we surround our children with positive images of people that look like us and that behave like us living life.
I love that. I love that. That's a phenomenal message that needs to be, I think, repeated over and over again. What do you envision for your daughter, Emery, when she grows up?
Oh boy, what do I envision for Emery when she grows up? so many things. Honestly, I really do see her living independently. And I've taken to task just asking her for my own humor every now and again. Like, do you want to live with me when you grow up? And it was before I even finished the sentence, no. Okay. All right then. So I definitely see her living independently, whether it's a guest house that I build on my own property that I have one day, or I rent an apartment for her and she has a live-in assistant.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely see her having her own space, living her own life. We're very close. In my head, we'll always be this close and we'll always be attached at the hip. But reality says no, not so much. I do see her working. She loves to paint. She loves to draw. She loves anything that has to do with art. I can definitely see her going to college and getting a bachelor's of art. Or even not going to college and just becoming an artist. She's actually very, very talented in her technique, in the way that she sees things, and the way she portrays things in her art. So I can definitely see that being a thing. I see her traveling. I see her just living as full of a life as she wants to live.
That sounds fabulous. Well, let's take a look. There was another program that you had expressed yourself in that regard. Let's see what Adiba and Emery have in store for the future.
Let's see.
Jesus H. I didn't even put waterproof mascara on. Okay. So my hope for my daughter, Emery, as a girl of color who will one day be a woman of color, I hope that you let nothing stand in your way. We have gone through this life, pushing through every barrier, finding new ways to do the things that people said you couldn't do. And I hope that you continue to use that sometimes drive me crazy determination and stubbornness that you have to reach every goal that you set for yourself. I hope for you as a Black woman in this world is that someone doesn't cut you down before you get there, because they'd be taking the brightest star. You're so bright and so shiny and magical, and this world is so ready, deuces, for someone like you, for a spirit like yours and a soul like yours. Mom's not gonna cry, I'm not gonna do it. But those are my hopes for you.
Adiba, thank you so much.
Still not gonna cry.
I really appreciate you taking the time to, bring your experience and wisdom to home, frankly.
Yes.
At some point we do get to see you again
I hope so.
in the U.S. Virgin Islands. I mean, one of the things I have tacked on my wall, but I'm talking to you from my office, is a quote from James Baldwin, who, I revere, as he was an author and, cultural icon, a civil rights advocate. And one of the things that he says that I have on my wall is that children have never been very good at listening to their elders, but they've never failed to imitate them.
Yes.
So I think Emery, who may not necessarily listen to everything mommy tells her, I think you're raising a little Adiba Nelson, one that I'm sure you're proud now, and she is going to be awesome. Look out, world.
Sorry, world. But thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And thank you for having me on your show today. I hope soon, once the world stops being on fire, that I can come and visit you all down in the Virgin Islands.
That would be great. That would be great. We would be more than happy to have you. Trust me.
Thank you. Thank you.
And this is it for Able to Raise. This is our first attempt to bring disability rights issues to the Virgin Islands. I hope we have that opportunity at another time. So thank you so much for joining us. Have a good day. trust